Hey, BassGeek here, and you geeks requested it, so I'm going to talk to you about finding deep winter bass. That's right, geeks. I posted a question on YouTube under community, and it was asking, what do you most want to learn about when it comes to winter bass? And a couple of you said shallow. We'll get to that in a future video. A lot of you all said deep, which is kind of what I'm good at, because I mean, look at the lake I'm on right now. Look, I mean, it's steep, deep. Look, we're 60 some feet, and you can see there's shad here. So where do we start? Number one, I'm going to start in two places. Maps. Navionics web app is incredible. Two, the deep dive app. The deep dive app is going to tell me a whole lot, just like it did this morning when it was showing me where the wind was going to blow, what the weather was going to be, what the lunar cycle was going to be, how dirty the lake was going to be, and where I could find those bluffs and those points to catch some shallower bass. Now, it also showed me what time the wind was going to lay down. And if you look at it out here now, it's pretty much dead slick calm. Now, believe it or not, that's when I'm going to start looking for those deeper bass. Because when I got no wind in a clear water fishery like South Holston, where I'm at today, it's time to go deep. And by the way, if you want to try the deep dive app for free with all the bells and whistles, go check out that link in the description below. So there's a few things that you need to know before you come out looking for these winter bass out deep. A few things that you need to make sure you know about the lake, whether it be your home lake or whether it be a new lake that you're going to. Number one, you need to keep up with the weather, at least the 3 days before you get there. So today we come out, it's going to be a 61 degree day. Now you might think, man, it's going to be 61 degree. We can go out here and fish shallow because it's going to warm the water. This is the first day of it, and behind that, we've had 30 and 40 degree days. To me, unless I get a warm up, I'm not going to focus on that shallow bite. I'm going to continue to focus on that deep bite. Now, what it might do to those deep bass is slow them down. So their progression out of the creeks, out of the guts, toward that main lake. So weather is very important. If you're going to be out here fishing the next 3 days, it's going to warm up. We're going to be in the upper 50s for pretty much the rest of this week. Now, it might change where I'm looking for bass and how active they are. So that may tweak out my bait selection. The other thing that you want to know is the forage for these bass. I know that this lake, we're out on South Holston today, and on this lake, there's really three dominant species of shad. There's gizzard shad, which aren't as dominant. There are threadfin, which is pretty dominant. And then the most dominant, and what the smallmouth seem to like on this lake, is the alewives. Now you have to know what these shad do. Now shad are pretty much going to go deep. Alewives are not a shad. They're actually a herring. And alewives, they go deep. They're going to get as deep as they can get. They like that cool water. They don't really care much about getting that UV radiation heat. Shad, now that's a different story. A lot of times I can go down this creek that we're in right now. I can go right down the gut and I can actually see the alewives on the bottom and the threadfin on the top. Shad like the sun. And in the coldest weather, if it's a sunny day, those shad are going to pull up. Gizzard shad are a little bit different even still. Gizzard shad actually have an air bladder where alewives and most other shad do not. So gizzard shad, they like to feed on the bottom. A lot of times you're not going to find them in huge schools out in the middle of the lake or on the bottom. They're going to be near or close to places that they can feed on the bottom. So deep flats, close to deep flats where they can pull off of creek channel drop-offs, that sort of area. If you've ever been on a flat, just running your trolling motor high, and I know a technique here in the fall that we like to do is either burn crankbaits, or my favorite are lipless traps up on deeper flats. If you get up in there, you'll actually see those big gizzard shad in this clear water that we're on actually dart away as you're kind of running that trolling motor on high up in those flatter areas, because they're up there feeding. And what they'll do is they'll just pull off to that first drop as the winter comes. The next thing is you've got to know your target species, or what's dominant on that lake. This lake is, predominantly smallmouth. There's some good largemouth on this lake, but they're few and far between. For the most part, you're going to catch some really good big smallmouth here. And those smallmouth and those largemouth are going to react to those temp drops very differently, spotted bass included. I've caught largemouth here 55 feet deep, but the key to catching largemouth is really keen on the deep structure here. Those points, those humps, those underwater islands, that's where they seem to be. Especially once largemouth, seems like once they get down in that 50s, lower 50s, mid 50s, that's where they tend to be. Now smallmouth and spotted bass, they love the cold, smallmouth especially. So they're going to get down there deep. And today we're seeing most of the alewives 55 feet deep, right out in the guts of the creeks. Again, I'll explain what I mean by gut here shortly. They're going to be down there and they're going to be super active. They're going to be chasing in those balls of shad. They're going to be moving around. And I mean, in the dead of winter, you're going to find bass that are doing that. Now, I like to key on them. The depth can create a problem, but their activity level means they're eating. And that means you're not trying to get a dormant bass into biting. The spotted bass, they're kind of in between. They're like a largemouth and a little like a smallmouth. They're going to be a little more dormant as we get down in those 40-degree temps. They're going to relate a lot to structure, but they're also going to relate to those herring, if you've got those herring in the lakes you fish down in North and South Carolina, or anywhere else, Georgia, I think, too. And that's a big deal, because you can still find those spotted bass being pretty active in the wintertime. But they like to be around some sort of structure. So let me show you, and I'm going to give you the definition of the things that I'm going to look for. And during the wintertime, a lot of times I will focus on the lower end of the lake. Generally because most people that are winning tournaments are winning it on the lower end of the lake. So that's what we're going to focus on. Now, we're kind of mid-lake right now in a pretty good creek here. But we did that mainly to get away from the wind. There are some good fish here, but I'm going to zoom in a little bit and show you. Now, there's a difference between ditches and creeks. And the difference is let's say this right here. This is a ditch in a creek. And the difference between a ditch and a creek is that a creek has active water running into it pretty much year round. A ditch only has water running into it pretty much when it rains. Sometimes it can be a little rain, sometimes it can be a lot. That's my definition, and most of the people I know, that's their definition. During the fall, I really focus on creeks. And the reason why is because when the shad move up in here, they're moving up in here because of those fall rains are going to wash things into the creek that allow them to feed, and the bass are going to follow. So in the fall, active water creeks. That's something to key on. But then as they start their movement out, as we start dropping down into the upper 50s, down into the upper 40s, they're going to work their way back out. Now these bass may not move all the way out to the main lake. So during the winter time, you want to focus on the first third of the creek. You can focus on main lake, but don't ignore, if I took this creek and said I'm going to break it up into 3 parts, I'm going to say 1/3, 2/3, back third, right here. Now, that may not be scientifically measured out to the exact, but that's pretty much what I'm going to focus on. And I know that right here is where they'll winter a whole lot. These shad are on their way moving along with the bass. So what is a gut? A gut is the middle deepest part of a creek or a ditch. So it can be this, if you can see the lines, these lines right here, the dotted lines represent a creek channel or a gut or a ditch, as that would be a ditch. This would be a creek channel. So as you can see here, it even says creek bed. Here's a creek bed. You can see there's a road bed up through here. So that's where I'm going to start looking for shad. And you can see as we come up in here, we've found both some thread fin up shallow and we found some alewives down deep. For me, on this lake, I like to focus on the alewives. They tend to be bigger, and that means there's going to be bigger smallmouth that are focusing on. So now let's talk about points and humps. So now we're going to move down to around the extreme lower end of the lake, and here we're going to talk about points and humps. So we got 2 creeks here. We can see this is kind of both. It's a point, it's got a hump adjacent to it. So you've got great areas. This is a gut, and here's the creek channel, 2 creek channels that run by it. So this area could be holding some pretty good bass. Now we'll see right here is a ditch, so not a creek, but if we zoom out, we can see we've got 2 major creeks here and here that are going to have active water feeding. So I will tell you this, during the first part of winter and the main part of winter, I don't focus a whole lot on long tapering points. I want points that are more like this, shorter, steeper, deeper, maybe with some deeper edges on it. Now, probably not quite that far up into the creek, but again, I'm going to focus on guts. Here's where I'm going to focus. And again, I'm telling you this because a lot of times this can be 2 different types of bass. The smallmouth I'm going to look for are going to be right here, and we'll go down and we'll see if we can find some bass down here. And maybe some largemouth up here that's going to be on the bottom. But again, you'll see here we've got a long tapering point. To me, I'm going to focus a lot on these sort of areas. These sort of areas. Some of the points that and humps that are going to be a little steeper are going to have steeper drop-offs to them. That's what I'm going to look for. And I mean, some of them you might even think are really do nothing points. I'll show you an actual pretty good one right here. You know, you get two creeks that are splitting, you got active water coming both ways, and that doesn't look like a lot, but you got two pinch points here too. So as these bass are moving out, they're going to really get pinched in and then come together right there. Now, let's go put this to use and see if we can actually find some of these bass. All right, so we just sat down here in this creek. I'm gonna show you what I mean by the gut. I can already see, looks like some shad in here. So geeks, you can see we're right in the middle of the creek right here. We're in the gut. Now you can even see right here, we are absolutely right in the middle of this creek. Now we come all the way back to the back looking, we spun around, we come back out. So we're looking through right here and we've got some shad over here. We've got some up high, and right there is actually some bass down there below. Look at that, good little school of bass right there. So we're already seeing some bass on our 2D. Let's go on out here. Now we can see, and if you can see that bright spot inside of that, that tells us that even inside there, we've got 2 or 3 little bright spots that on the bottom, we're seeing some shad. Now this wouldn't necessarily pique my interest too much right off the bat. So we definitely want to find more than this. But that was a good little school back there. And that's looking real good. You can see here what I'll do. On my side imaging, you can see all that is shad. All that is shad off to our right side here. So all that little blob is shad. And so this would be a great place to start and jump up on the trolling motor. Now, you know, depth, you can tell, you know, we're in 50 feet here. I'm gonna kind of move us over to this side. But depth, you know, you can see some bass down here in the bottom of that, right there. Right there, some on the bottom and around it. When they're inside the shad, something that I've found is, right there you can see some chasing. When they're inside that shad, something that I've found that's real good is blade baits, something with a vibration. So we found bass and we found shad in spot number 1. That's a gut of a creek. We're in kind of the first third. They're slowly moving out. You've seen the bass down there chasing. Now remember, if you've got threadfin, American shad, something like that, they're gonna react a little bit differently. Now we've seen a couple that are up feeding, and a lot of times when you get around these shad and they're deep, you'll still have a couple that are up above the shad, and they'll just be kind of hanging out there. You can catch those fish a lot of times too. A lot of different baits, of course, but we'll talk about that in a different video. And watch our fishing videos. We'll put a playlist over here so you can go and check all that stuff out, especially our winter fishing video playlist. All right, now let's make a run and let's go look at some humps and some points. All right, geeks, so one of the very first things that I like to look for, especially when I'm scoping, has got to be shad. And as you can see, we're getting ready to scan a point out here. I'm going to show you the old school way of doing it. You can see we've got some shad. Now, you can also see we've got a nice point right here, and I'm going to show you the old school way of graphing a point. So if you don't have, let's say you're going to old school vertical Demiki rig. So if you don't have a live scope, because now what I try to do is not drive up on the points, but old school way with down imaging 2D, we'd have to drive over the points and the humps, and humps are the same way. So what I'm going to do, I know we've got shad in the area, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start out here at the deep side. So I'm going to pay a lot of attention during the winter as to any sort of change or where flat spot or where it drops off on either side. That's where I'm going to target. This point is pretty uniform. There's a little bit of flat up in here, really super shallow, and then there's a little bit of a flat right there. You can see where the lines get, and then it drops off that steeper sides. Those steeper sides we're going to talk about. And I'm going to try and come right up this little bend right here first. There we go. Try and hit that bend perfect. There you can see some shad being chased on the top of the water. I'll kind of show you what it looks like on 2D. So we're coming right up it, coming close to that. So you can see what we've got here. We're coming up. There's already a bass down there. Here's what it looks like in the 2D. We're coming across. You can see there's an old house foundation or something right there, maybe a bridge. You can see maybe a bass sitting right there. You can see him also over here. There's another bass hanging off the edge. You can see them right there. Here we go. There's a bunch of bass hanging off the edge there. Down there about 50 feet. Now you can see it's a little harder to see right here. And that's because of the way the cone drops off the edge, but you can still see the dots right there. You can see them. So now what we'll do is we'll turn around and we'll go up a little bit shallower. Old school, we used to stay about 10 feet off of our old boat wash here. So you see our old boat wash right there? Now you can see we're going to come a little bit shallower this time. Now remember, that's just where we spun around. So all this is actually still in front of us now. Our tracks are going to help us stay in line a little bit. Let's see what we've got over here. Right here's what we got. There's just some bass out there hanging off that edge. You can see a few of them here. You can see us coming in. A lot of times what I like to do is zoom in. You'll get a little better picture of that. This is our point right here. Now we're coming up on it. A lot of times what I do, because you'll lose it, is I'll actually do this vertical too. So I'll change it around a little bit. There you can see we got a few more bass hanging off of it on up here. Good dots too. You can see them on our side imaging on both sides. See them on our 2D. Now we're back out here over the open water again. So we'll make one more run. There we go. Gonna come up just a little bit. You can see kind of the drop off right there, where it starts to get flat. We'll probably make one more pass across. So let's see if we see anything. I already got maybe one hanging there. You can see them just right there. Just right there. There we go, a few up here. Cut down our, got it a little hot. So not as many up here. That's probably a stump right there. Got a few hanging off the edge there, a few on the top. So I'll show you another little trick. There's our shad shad ball over here. Now we're in the creek channel. So now that we know there's probably not as many up shallow, something that I like to do is come right down the point. So what we're gonna do, you can see our point there. We're gonna get in fairly tight. And you can see, we're just gonna go right down the side of it here. Right down the side. Kind of trace that. Let's zoom in a little bit. Now what I want to do is, you know, they were seemingly staying out here in that 40, 50 foot area. So I want to stay in that kind of depth range. Kind of missing it a little bit here. There's our shad. But you can see we're going to come right down the side of this point now. And basically we're going to come out and go around. There's a few bass. You know, we're still in that 40, 46 foot area. I think most of them are out here on this flat area that we've seen, or just above it. You can see some stumps, maybe a few bass up there. There we go. There we go. Start to see them there. This is what they look like on 2D. See some stumps down there, a lot of stumps. So we're just gonna work this out to the tip and we're gonna spin around. Out to about 54 feet, right back up the point. A lot of times this will tell us exactly what side they're gonna be on. You can see already there's some up there shallow, so they seem to like this side a little bit better. You know, we're out here a little bit deeper, 54 feet. You can see some stumps and some bass there, shad everywhere. Now, that's pretty much how we do this. I mean, it's really that simple. Next step would be able to get up there, and like I said, if I was using my 2D, if I only had a 2D, I'd vertical fish those fish. They're 50 feet deep, perfect. You know, if you're in a kayak, you can probably get away with fishing them for like 10 and 15 feet, or a metal boat, probably somewhere around there. You know, it really is that simple. You just have to say, hey, I'm gonna put in the time behind my electronics. And even if you don't have electronics, get you the original depth finder or Carolina rig. Come out here on these points. Good maps change the world, guys. Everybody wants to argue about forward facing sonar. Maps change the world. They change the world. Well, way more than forward facing sonar ever did. So at least get you a good map. Buy the Navionics app on your phone, come out here and throw that Carolina rig around, drag it, feel what's on the bottom, throw a big swim bait out there, throw a big jig, football jig out there, drag it around some of these points, and you'll catch winter bass. That's really everything you need to know, whether you're chasing them, chasing shad, whether you're chasing them on the bank, no matter what species you're chasing, no matter what electronics you have, or if you don't have them at all, this is how to go out and find them deep during the winter time. Like I said, even if you don't have electronics, go pay the money. Go pay the like 14 bucks or $19.99 for the stinking map app, you know. I mean, it's probably the most important thing. Get out here and fish these points and humps during the winter time. I mean, you know, that's pretty much kind of what we've been doing all day. You know, we've chased around some shad and some bass feeding on shad, but for the most part, I mean, we've been targeting points and humps. There's no replacing time on the water. So on your lake, you're going to have to get out there, and you're either going to have to throw a bait, you're going to have to graph, you're going to have to spend time catching bass and gaining confidence in it. You know, when I first learned how to Damiki rig, I literally came to this lake and graphed. Did not pick a rod up. Graphed different places for a solid month, 1, 2, and 3 days a week. So you want to learn this stuff, come out and put the time in. You know, me and Mike, a lot of the stuff that I knew where it was on the upper end of this lake. Last year, we kind of did the same thing on the lower end. You know, we went out and we started graphing and figuring out where some of the stuff that was more live scope friendly, I guess you would say, or even, not, traditional. And we just spent, hours running around. We might jump up and pick up a bait and drop it down because we were seeing bass in 80 foot of water, and we were like, is that bass? And sure enough, we'd catch one or two. We'd be like, holy cow, man, they're 80 feet deep. So it's pretty crazy, but at the same time, it's pretty fun to get out here and learn how to catch these fish. So you want to know what baits we use? I've got a video that talks about what baits and how to use them with 2D without forward-facing sonar. Now, pretty much the same exact baits with forward-facing sonar. It just makes targeting the bass a little easier. Trust me, today it don't make you catch them any easier. It's been a rough day. But if you want to see that video and understand what baits you want to use and how to use them and what baits you can use with 2D sonar, any 2D sonar, even the smallest, cheapest version, catch those deep winter bass, be sure to go check out this video right here. It's full of great information. Otherwise, questions and comments in the comment section below. You geeks know I love to talk about bass fishing with you. I hope this helped you out. Like it if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe. Make sure you ring that bell so you become part of the 100% Watch Squad. We love you geeks. We love all you geeks. You geek rock.